is episode 111. Episode 111 here, pucksports.com. Johnny Cans, John Canzano, johncanzano.com. Bald-faced Truth, 750 the game, all brought to you by Zeke's Pizza. Visit Zeke'sPizza.com for the best selection of local Northwest craft beers. Here's we record this on Tuesday, May 21st. How is the brand new knee? How is it doing?
I turned a corner, Puck. I got this physical therapist who played soccer at UC Santa Barbara. She just kicks my butt. And anybody who's ever had physical therapy knows there's two kinds of physical therapy. There's the you walk in, you're leisurely, oh, it hurts so much, I don't want to do too much physical therapy. And then there's the personal trainer physical therapy. I have transitioned into that second one. Yeah. And I'm doing, I didn't have the heart to tell her this, but we were doing calf raises and we were doing hamstring stretches and we were doing all these, pelvic thrusts and all these things, to
work on my. Does your wife know this?
I was working on my core strength, Puck.
Yeah, I bet you were.
And so I didn't have the heart to tell her this, but this was stuff I wasn't doing before the knee injury, So it was I was really sore. I'm afraid I'm going to have a second injury off this thing, but no, I feel really good. I'm just at that point, I hit a point where I'm trusting it now. And anybody who's had a knee surgery or any injury knows this. There's just a point psychologically where if you're going to step down from somewhere and you're post-surgery, I'm stepping down now without thinking about it. So that's a win.
Okay, I want to get right into this. This story. This is so juicy, and we've talked about this before. This story and following it for the last year and a half. The Jayden Rashada story, who was a one-time commit at Miami. He decommits from Miami because he found a better NIL deal allegedly at Florida, and then there was reports that came out. Oh my God, Florida, their Gator collective, is going to give this guy $13 million. And people are like, what? He's good, but $13 million. It ends up not being the case. He leaves Florida or decommits from Florida and transfers to Arizona State, which that's where his dad played. Allegedly no money, no NIL deal at Arizona State. And then I forgot about this. He plays, I think, does he start 3 games or so?
Yeah, I played a little bit. And Kenny Dillingham ended up with his tight end playing quarterback or something like that by the middle of the season. But yeah, he got some snaps.
Yeah, and then he leaves, and I forgot about this. He leaves Arizona State, and he ends up transferring to Georgia, which is the number one rival to Florida. And then it comes out today that Jayden Rashada is suing now Florida, Billy Napier, and a couple of Gator boosters because they reneged on their $13 million commitment that he thought he was going to secure through their collective. I mean, this is a wild story, man. There's so much there. The whole Georgia-Florida rivalry thing. The fact that Kirby Smart's given him the blessing to do this, that's another element that's awesome. What do you make of everything in the Rashada saga here of trying to get and suing Florida right now?
Well, first of all, Florida embarrassed him. Remember when that story came out? He was getting all that money. They made a big deal about it. He was being celebrated as this pioneer who was at the forefront of NIL, and then he ends up with nothing. And because of that, I think, he was embarrassed. And I think he's going, hey, I had damages here. But secondarily, I mean, this is a byproduct of letting boosters and wannabe athletic director fans and every sycophant in the program into the room when you're having these recruiting conversations. And it does also tell us, because he's suing Napier, he's suing the university, suing, the donors. It kind of tells us that even back then when, these conversations were not supposed to be happening, they were happening and they were involving the coaching staff. I also thought it was interesting, and I think this is just the beginning. I think you're going to see more of this litigation. You're going to see some of the collectives who are mad at players who are leaving. You're going to see players who are now going to go and say, wait a minute, what was I promised? But it kind of just tells you we're at this phase now where the Wild West isn't quite over, but we're starting to find out how wild it really was. And this, fraudulent thing. And, I was like, this is the beginning of the fraudulent allegations. But I thought it was really interesting that Rashada, he's going to Georgia now. And, they're rivals with Florida. And he asked Kirby Smart's permission to sue Billy Napier in Florida. Like, you're asking your coach permission. Yes.
And Smart was like, yeah, that's the other element that I love about it, that Kirby Smart. It's funny because my neighbor is a University of Georgia graduate, and her brother was in the same fraternity as Kirby, so she knows him quite well. And she loved hearing stories about him. She's like, he is an animal, man. He is as a red ass competitor as you will find. And this is just another way for him to kind of dig at Florida. You're damn right you can sue him. You were wrong. You'll be righted here in Georgia.
Right. We'll take care of you.
Yeah. And just, can you imagine? I think you should, just to follow this story, you should fly down to the SEC media days. I just want to see just how wild it will be. Do they position them kind of close to each other? You know, Napier and Kirby. And
but what can you say if you're Billy Napier? Like, you know, if your boosters made that promise, if you end up being liable for this $1 million, it doesn't just cost you $1 million or cost your boosters $1 million. It's your reputation as a recruiter, and that stuff matters to the kids who are hearing about NIL deals. You know, these schools will use anything against each other to get recruiting. And then, I covered Jerry Tarkanian when he was at Fresno State, and Tark had, he was like an NIL pioneer, right? And so Tark had these boosters that were just all around the program. And he had this one guy named Stan. Stan always wore a beanie cap. During basketball games, he was the guy like in the background. If the camera panned by the bench, he was filling up the Gatorade cups, setting them out. Everyone probably thought he worked for the school. No, this guy was like a multimillionaire who was giving the players $100 handshakes. And, I asked Stan one time, I said, why do you think that's – and he was like, oh, these poor kids don't have anything. They don't have anything. We have jumped the shark on like the $100 handshakes. Rashada gets promised $1 million, $13 million, doesn't get it. I'm really interested to see if a court will uphold this, or will there be a settlement? I don't know.
Do you think he has something written down? You think he has a contract that they can show?
I don't know if he has a contract, but I bet you he's got text messages. He's a kid, and that's how the coaches are communicating. They're text messages and DMs. And I bet you there's some communication on that front that involved money. And certainly there were conversations, Puck, like, that number doesn't get out. And Florida wasn't shooting that number down either. And, the schools are really interesting because when the numbers get floated out there, even if they're false, I see a lot of the schools kind of just going, well, we can't talk about it, because they want kids to think the money's there. We've got money. We'll spend it if you come. But this is ugly, and it's not going to be the only case.
So the next step, do you think, in this whole NIL world, and this is, it's not going away, there has got to be some, like, a professional attitude towards it, right? Like, there needs to be contracts signed between player, the collective, what have you. So and honestly, if the player is protected, I will be sympathetic here to Rashada for a moment. If he was promised, hey man, 13 million's coming to you. All right, well, I'm out of the Miami deal, and they said they were going to give me 9.5, and I signed there, and then now that's not promised. Well, that's not right. But on the flip side of it, I think the schools need to be protected as well, because when you sign someone, and with that comes money from the school/collective, there needs to be a commitment from that kid that he just doesn't get to spend a year there, take the money, then jump ship to someplace else. And I think that's where I would like to see the next step of this all take place.
I think there should be transparency. I think, especially when it comes to public schools, I think, we all should know. There should be a database where we all should know what the players are getting in the NIL deals. But here's the thing, like a lot of the collectives, and I've talked to a number of them, a lot of them don't do contracts. They do verbal confirmation. They'll text the kids. I know Oregon State did not do a contract with Damian Martinez. That was just, hey, we're good for $100,000 every quarter, and they made good on it. I asked them why they don't do contracts, like several of the different collectives, and they just said, because they don't want it out there. They don't want those contracts leaked. They also don't want to lock themselves into multi-year deals with players. So a lot of them are just going quarter to quarter, saying, if you're still here, it's basically a retention bonus that you're getting. And so, yeah, I think there needs to be, you talked about protection for the schools. There's also the agents and the middle people, the middlemen in these deals. that are heavily inflating and lying about what the deals are about. And so the schools, the athletic directors, are spending an inordinate amount of their time running around trying to figure out, like, are they telling the truth when they're saying they're getting $500,000 from Texas or $750,000 from LSU? Are they telling the truth? And so they're calling each other. And so if there were a centralized database where they could just go, hey, the deals and the offers are in here, just like the transfer portal, I think that it would create some accountability and protection for both sides. I also think it would give us a clearer picture of what's going on, because I think one of the things college athletics has been slow with, whether it was the BCS or the 14 playoff, the expansion, the transfer portal, all this change we're seeing, the consistent problem has been that we don't quite know what's going on, and it takes us too long to sort of ascertain the problem. And so if there is a big problem here, there's a lopsided amount of money going to players at Ohio State or whatever, it needs to be out there for the greater good of the sport and for the protection of all.
What as you kind of look ahead here with the NIL and the future of it, I've heard this several times, and I want to know if you have more clarity on it. And I apologize for setting you up on this earlier, so you could have more detail on it. But you're a wealth of knowledge. You probably already know it.
Yeah.
Is there something what's happening in June with the NIL and the relationships with the collectives and the schools? Is there some rule being laxed to now where the schools can be directly involved?
Yes, and Jake Dicker hit on this. I was talking to him a couple of weeks ago for an interview on my radio show, and I started talking to him. I said, make a pitch to your fans who are in my listening audience who want to give to the Cougar Collective. And he said, I can't do that until after June. So he can't actively sort of promote the idea. It's very different, though. Oregon State and the state of Oregon, they can do it. They can now, Scott Barnes can say, give to the Damnation Collective. That's our collective. Jake
this
Dicker,
is a Washington thing.
Jake Dicker is waiting to be able to say, hey, and it varies. And that's part of the problem, too, is this legislation has varied from state to state from the beginning. Florida was at the forefront of it. So the Jayden Rashada thing is really interesting to me. That will not be the only lawsuit. That will not be the only problem.
You envision this NIL with the collectives eventually just going in-house to the schools?
Yes. Yes, and I think the schools would prefer it because, here's another problem nobody's talking about. Let's look at like the WCC. Okay, it's a basketball conference. You've got Gonzaga at the top of it, along with St. Mary's, now GCU coming in. Those schools have some money. They have some NIL money to spend. The teams in the middle and the bottom of that conference don't have a lot of NIL money. There's a huge disparity in what Gonzaga has in its war chest versus like the University of Portland. University of Portland is focused on, like, can they come up with $250,000 to help with retention of their own players? Gonzaga's out there, with its arms open, playing as a blue blood almost in college basketball. So there's just a difference between those two things. But their respective universities are also different in that, at a place like the University of Portland, at a place like Santa Clara, other places in the WCC, you're not going to get buy-in from like the fundraising arm of the university. They're not going to be like, hey, go out and raise NIL money and call all our donors, because they're not going to want to be cannibalized. So, they're instructing their athletic departments, go out and raise new money, find new donors. And that's really hard to do because, your first phone call, if you're Oregon, is to your biggest donor, Phil Knight, when you have a need. And so some of these schools and other conferences, although I do think it's all going to go in-house, it's all going to become part of the university and the athletic department's fundraising. The real challenge is you don't want to cannibalize your existing donations and tap those people out with NIL requests.
Speaking of first, before I get to the Pac-12, May 23rd, is that the deadline for this lawsuit, the House a lawsuit to be finalized in terms of a settlement? This is not like a decision in the court ruling on this that we've talked about before. This is just a deadline to settle it before it goes to court, correct?
Right. Yeah, and it will be settled, and it's unfortunate that the 27 non-FCS football conferences are going to get left holding the bag here. They're going to pay 60% of the revenue moving forward. And the Power Fives that exist under this lawsuit, Pac-12 still together under this lawsuit, they'll only pay 40% despite receiving 90% of the television revenue.
How is this? How does this happen?
Because the 27 other schools were not named in the lawsuit. Now, when these antitrust suits are filed, the attorneys are not dumb. Who did they name in the lawsuit? They named the NCAA. They named the Power 5 conferences because the Power 5 conferences have all the money. So when they go to settle, that settlement conversation is only with the NCAA and the Power 5 members. The other schools, like the Big Sky Conference, they don't have a voice. They don't have a vote in this thing. Mountain West does not have a vote. WCC, no vote in this. The American, no vote. So these other conferences are lobbying the Power 5, saying, hold on. This lawsuit's really is about retroactive NIL money. And the athlete that keeps getting brought up as the example of the guy who's going to gain the most is a guy like Zion Williamson. He should have been paid. He should have been able to earn NIL money. He lost out. But the problem is, like the Big Sky, under the settlement that is going to be passed, is going to have to pay $3 million a year. That's a huge number for the Big Sky. $3 million a year. It's going to cost each of those Big Sky members $300,000 a year. And the money is going to people like Joe Burrow, Zion Williamson, Nick Bosa, Justin Herbert. It's going to be those guys getting the money. It's patently unfair, but it is another example of the Power 5 conferences, in particular the SEC and the Big Ten, getting to the trough, eating like pigs, and letting the rest of the NCAA help foot the bill.
Pac-12 Network, when does it officially go dark?
June 30th at midnight, it will go dark. I am told they have some special plans for that final day, that they're going to do like some best ever in the last decade kind of montage stuff on the last day. But the last live broadcast is coming up later this week, Puck. It'll be from Scottsdale in the Pac-12 baseball tournament. It'll be the semifinal games that are on Friday. The two semifinal games will be the last live programming that the Pac-12 Network produces. Roxy Bernstein is on the call. He told me, he watched Ashley Adamson do it so beautifully during the men's and women's basketball tournaments as she signed off from Vegas. Roxy's saying he's trying to think of something to say. And he said it's going to be emotional. Teresa Gold, the commissioner, told me she's going to Scottsdale. She said it'll be the last time that we're all together, meaning her staff, the network staff, and I think there's some sadness around the event, a little bit of celebration. And I talked to some of the people putting on the baseball tournament from the operations side, and they're saying they're just trying to stay focused on making the event a success. But kind of a somber, interesting week.
Because the championship game's on ESPNU, right?
Correct. Yeah, championship game Saturday. But Friday night semifinal games. If you're sitting around Friday night, check out the Pac-12 Network. It'll be the last live broadcast of this edition of the Pac-12 Network.
You talk about the great football teams and basketball teams and players, men's, women's in basketball and football. You forget the long, rich, storied history of Pac-10, Pac-8, Pac-10, Pac-12 baseball.
Yeah. I mean, you talk multiple national championships, so many MLB first-round draft picks. I was going through all the draft picks the other day. It's mind-blowing how many great players had come out of the conference. It was a great baseball conference when you consider, USC and its history, and UCLA, the Arizona schools, Oregon State has no doubt been a power. And there's just been great stories, great players, great baseball conference.
Well, you're talking about, Jackie Robinson played in this conference. Barry Bonds played in this conference. I mean, you know what I mean? It's like, it really is unbelievable when you start thinking about them. And I'm leaving out a million different players, right? But it's crazy. It's crazy that will be the final broadcast. And knowing Roxy, man, he's going to be. I mean, Adley Rutschman played there. I mean, just recently, but God, Dustin. I'm going down the rabbit hole because I'm looking at this list. Dustin Pedroia, Terry Francona was an outfielder for Arizona, the greatest baseball player. He certainly had the greatest single season history in baseball. John Olerud. Mark Pryor, Barry Zito. God, it's
Mark
just
McGuire.
unreal.
Mark McGuire, USC. Yeah.
Mark McGuire at USC. Yeah, I mean, it just, you can go on and on and on of just some great talent that was there. But it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. And so Friday, Roxy, knowing Roxy, he'll do a great job.
Yeah,
As professional as ever.
He's trying not to get, so you want some of that to be authentic, right? And just in the moment. But he's seen, they know the end of the runway is coming, and the network's transitioning into something else. And so Friday night will be the end of something, beginning of something new.
So speaking of that, what does it transition into? What is the future of it? It's not going away. So what does it turn into?
Yeah. Oliver Luck, who consulted last year in 2023 for the Oregon State, Washington State contingent, his last duty, I'm told, was to look at the Pac-12 network and try to come up with a business plan. Is this a business? Is it viable? Should we just sell off all the equipment, abandon the building, or could it be a production facility that could operate? And Luck's recommendation was, I'm told, that this is a business. This is a side hustle. There's revenue here. This is profitable. So what they're going to do is, Teresa Gold, the Pac-12 commissioner, told me this week that they're going to produce those 13 football games. They're also going to produce, the Pac-12 Enterprises, they're calling it, will produce all of the WCC content in men's and women's basketball. So they're going to get all that production work. They're also in conversation, she said, with professional and other college conferences to pick up production of live sports events. Now, some of it is that, Teresa said that they had sort of pioneered some of the remote broadcasts that everybody hates, that the Pac-12 sort of had pioneered the equipment and the infrastructure for it. The other piece to this is, Oregon's going off to the Big Ten, but Oregon doesn't have like an in-house Big Ten network sort of production facility on their campus. USC's building one. So, the Pac-12 Enterprises could step in and end up being a pretty decent business and doing work for Apple, Amazon, MLS on soccer, Major League Baseball, even the NASCAR events that the CW is producing. So I think Pac-12 Enterprises, it's kind of a wait and see. But I heard a little uptick of enthusiasm from Teresa Gold as I kind of probed and said, what is this going to be? Is this a lemonade stand, or is this like a legit hustle? Oregon State, Washington State, can they live off this? Can they subsidize part of the media rights money that they're not going to get with income from this Pac-12 Enterprises? Now, the person that they have hired to put in charge of it, Michael Molinari, his background is he's produced the Olympics, he's produced like 11 Super Bowls, he's done Monday Night Football. He's a legit individual to be in charge of this stuff. And so I'm also told that the football games that we've talked about on the CW that are coming up this next season, the CW is talking with the Pac-12 about potentially having some of the Pac-12 network staff do the play-by-play and the analyst work on those games. So stay tuned.
Who are the network or the broadcasters for CW, like the analysts? Do we know who they are?
I have no idea. Yeah, and I think they just used people that the ACC network and the ACC had used before. And but the CW has no in-house production, so they have no staff. So Teresa Gold told me that.
Who are they using?
I don't even know.
I'm just curious.
I don't even know. And the numbers for those games weren't good last year, and that's part of the little bit of the concern from the Pac-12 is that they like to see more than 400,000 people tuned into these games. So how's that happen? Well, the ACC game is going to be the lead-in. But Oregon State and Washington State have got to bang the drum. They have to get noisy. They've got to tell their own story. And we know that's not in their DNA. But I think Oregon State's been doing a better job lately of sort of speaking up. Washington State needs to do that as well.
You think when we spoke last week, I don't know if the news was out, Netflix throwing their hat into the NFL. They have the holiday games, right? So it's another streaming service that is getting involved now with the National Football League. I get it's a very different beast and animal, NFL, and then the Pac-12 football. Do you think presidents will look back 5-10 years from now as this conference has crumbled and look back to that Apple deal and go, maybe we should have been the first to do it?
Yeah, I think they will. And I think there'll be a lot of regret. I think there's going to be a lot of revisionist history. There's going to be a lot of finger pointing. I think there wasn't just 12 presidents and chancellors. There was a lot of turnover in there. So there's about 16 or 18 different leaders of those campuses that all played a role. I even went back. I looked back at 2019. And Larry Scott was trying to do a private equity, get a private equity investment in the Pac-12's media rights back then. And I remember I was at the Red Box Bowl covering Oregon was playing Michigan State. And I got tipped off that, they were seeking a private equity investor, and I confirmed it. I wrote the story that day. Larry Scott, it turns out, got an offer. He got a $1 billion offer for 15% of the conference's media rights.
Was it the Saudis? Was it PIF?
I have no idea who it was, but Scott comes out like 2 months later and says, the presidents and chancellors don't want to do it. He didn't say at the time he had a deal. Now, I've subsequently found out it was $1 billion, 15%, which would have been a really nice infusion of cash, would have kept the conference together. And when you got a private equity firm, lobbying the media companies on your behalf, you've got a little bit more traction. I found out that the two biggest opponents of accepting that deal were, guess who?
Oregon and Washington?
No, close though. USC, UCLA.
Oh, really?
And I wonder, Puck, it just gets me thinking, did the Trojans and Bruins know 2018, 2019, were they so unhappy? Were they like that spouse who's muttering and rolling their eyes? The contempt. Was this contempt by USC and UCLA? Did they know back then that they were leaving?
Yeah, I think that they were tired of what they felt like, and I get it. I think they were tired of subsidizing the other schools. I think that's what it was. And they're just, you know what, we especially USC. We're USC, and we've got to sit there and share the same amount of money with Washington State. No. Why? Why are we doing that? And I just think they got tired of it. So, yeah, probably.
I had USC athletic department source tell me the day after they left or announced they were leaving to the Big Ten, they were upset with George Kliavkoff. They said, he never asked if we were unhappy. He never took a moment to ask us, did we want a bigger distribution after he was hired? And that was a misfire. And it was, but I go back to Larry Scott. Like, isn't that a clue in 2019 that the LA schools are not happy? Isn't that information that should have been maybe passed on to the other presidents and chancellors? Because I do think, Oregon State, Washington State, everybody in the conference except Oregon and Washington probably would have been okay, but was saying, hey, you can have a lopsided share of the media rights money. We get it. You're in LA. Like everybody would have been okay with that, probably, except Oregon and Washington. They would not have wanted to be at a disadvantage.
Right. How big is for speaking of Washington State and Oregon State, when we get in July and August, right before the start of the college football season, what wheels do you think they need to put in motion for the future of both of their programs? Does it need to start then? Does it need to heat up then?
It needs to heat up now. They need to start making plans now. I know Oregon State has added the former Dutch Bros CEO, who did a really nice job branding that company and taking them
Great
public.
Coffee.
IPO, right? He was there where the IPO went down. They've added him sort of to their consulting circle. I thought it was an interesting move, and I think Oregon State is starting to kind of do some things. They're talking about having their gymnastics team play in the Big 12. They're doing.
Is that finalized?
It's not finalized, but it's been a serious conversation, and the Big 12's got Big 12's got Denver playing in their. In their gymnastics conference. So don't make too much of this. This doesn't mean Oregon State's going to the Big 12 in all sports, but it's another bridge. It's another handshake between the two entities. And Washington State did that as well. They're playing Texas Tech. But I think, as soon as Washington State can get a full-time athletic director in place, they've got to get busy kind of telling their story, making noise. You cannot wait. I don't think you can wait till July and August to start talking about it. These are plans that need to begin now. I think both these schools are great schools. They're terrific at what they do. Oregon State's engineering and the Murrow School at Washington State's fantastic stuff. But they're terrible at telling their own story, Puck. They're terrible. It's just not in their own DNA. Like, they don't know how to celebrate their wins.
Right.
It's time for them to start celebrating. If they need to hire, Wyden and Kennedy and say, go launch a campaign, do it. Spend the money.
And you don't hesitate for a second for either school. if the Big 12 came to one of them and said, would you like to join, but you got to leave the other, both of them would jump at it.
I believe that, probably. Yeah. We're in this era of, I got to do what's best for myself. That's why people are driving down the shoulder of the freeway in traffic and cutting each other off. It's why the lady in 33D on the airplane is running by you, like God. She's never been on a plane before. People just, I got to do what's best for me. But everybody else is doing it. I found it interesting because we talked earlier about the settlement of the House case. The Pac-12, is unfortunately not going to be what it was. And part of that is everybody did what was for themselves, but now the Pac-12 is part of that. And they're part of that Power Five that is going to have 60% of the rest of college athletics pay 60% of the bill. They're happy to go along with that. So it's, everybody's doing what's best.
You ever covered seen a story like Scotty Scheffler getting pulled out of a car and arrested, thrown up against his own car, and then, 5 hours later, go out and shooting a 66?
Credit to him. Great focus. Great focus. But here's the other thing. Like, I've always found it weird. And I've covered the NBA, NFL, Major League Baseball. I've covered major golf tournaments. I have found it weird that, just sort of watching the athletes drive in, they drive into the gated parking lot, and on the outside of that cyclone fence there's civilians, and the inside there's something else, and there's no transition space there. And so Scheffler got caught in that zone where, like, I'm just kind of wondering for a major, like, should he have a driver? Should somebody,
I don't understand why they drive themselves there. I've never, and for people who don't know, like, they all get these courtesy cars, like Mercedes or Buick, whatever the sponsor is, and it's got the logo of the tournament, but they drive solo. And I always think, can't you give your caddy a ride? Where's your caddy? Like, how does your caddy get there? Where's your manager? Where's your coach?
Yeah.
Like, where's your PR person? I mean, I get for like the lower rung players, they wouldn't want all that, but like when you're the number one player in the world, I would think, ESPN, who followed the story with Darlington and Bob Wischusen, and they had a driver for their crew. How does the number one player in the world not have someone driving him through there and dealing with it?
The NFL players' parking lot is, I think, the wildest place. If you ever get a chance, hang out and watch the players drive in and out of there, because some guys are driving minivans, others are driving Harleys. Charlie Garner, I had an interview with Charlie Garner when he was with the Raiders in Oakland in the parking lot. Charlie Garner just had like a beat up green Honda Accord. It was just, it's so weird because he drives that thing outside the gates. Nobody's going to know that's Charlie Garner. Jerry Rice had, a Porsche with Flash 80 on the license plate, personalized plate. Everybody knew who he was, but unfortunate scene, kind of makes you wonder for a major event. Yeah. Why is somebody not driving him into the parking lot?
I want to end on this story because I've heard, because you told me your family, your kids are into wall ball. I love wall ball. This is a game I played all the time as a kid. And then I played two different versions of wall ball, but I can't remember what the other one we called it. But they're playing the old school one, right? With the big rubber ball.
Big rubber ball. They're banging it on the garage, the door. They're doing it in the house.
In the house.
They're doing it with reckless abandon. They're going to break something. I've become that parent. I was not that. I was the kid that my parents were yelling at. Don't jump over the couch with your football. You're going to hit your head on the coffee table.
How are they playing it in the house? Where are they playing
we
the
have
house
a front door, and we have hardwood floors in front of the front door. And
okay.
The 8-year-old and 9-year-old daughters have got the giant ball, and it's going batang, batang, batang off the inside of the front door. And then they're fighting over, was it interference?
Sure.
Did you hit with a flat hand? They require that you hit with a fist. I don't, you have to hit it with a fist. You cannot hit it flat-handed. So I don't know. It's their playground. I'm just living it.
Do they play? Ask them, and if do they allow waterfalls? Ask them if they allow.
What's a waterfall in your world?
It's a waterfall, if I remember correctly, where you're playing against the wall. It'll hit the top of the ceiling and then bounce right back down and like graze the wall.
Okay.
And I can't remember if that's in some versions of wall ball, that is illegal.
They
So,
have a thing called a rainbow where they hit it,
okay.
and if it goes up high enough after you hit it, you can run under it to distract the other player. I find
Oh,
that terribly distracting
well,
when
maybe
I'm
that's
trying to
waterfall.
compete.
Maybe that is waterfall,
Maybe
but it's
that's a
just a
waterfall. They
rainbow.
call it a rainbow. I call it hindrance. And
Yeah,
I have taken to hitting the ball and making the ball hit them, kind of like a Bob Gibson brushback pitch.
sure,
Because
sure.
if you're going to run under the ball, you're going to pay the consequence.
We used to also play a game. God, and we didn't call it wall ball. And I can't remember. Do we call it handball? But then
Probably,
there was
yeah.
another version where you played. It was like oh, what's the indoor racket sport?
Racquetball?
It's like racquetball.
Yeah.
What's the indoor racket sport? It's racquetball, you idiot.
Yeah.
But we would play with our hand with a tennis ball. Did you
Yeah.
ever play
Yeah, I
that game?
played that game. I think it's a faster moving game. That big red ball
Fun.
that's bouncing, it's a little obnoxious to
Hey,
me.
but it's fun though. They're playing. They're not on their Xbox playing Fortnite like a 10-year-old yelling, "Bro, stop shooting me, bro." Okay.
I love
You
it.
got to deal with him. Hey, did I tell you? Did we discuss what happened to my 10-year-old in baseball?
No, tell me.
We believe we've checked the records here.
Okay.
We believe he's the first player in the 70 years of our Ballard Little League to be ejected.
Oh wow. How old? 10?
He's 10, so he's playing, the majors division, right? So they're up against the guy. This is a few weeks ago. They're up against a guy who pitches really hard. He's 12 years old, throws it probably, high 50s, 58, maybe hit 60. I don't know. He throws really hard. And but he's really good for the first 2 innings. Gets a little wild in the third. My son comes up to bat. There's three and he's not trying to do that, but there's three over his head where my son's falling down on the ground trying to get out of the way. After the third one, because he thinks he's in MLB, he looks at the pitcher and does like the hands up, what are you doing?
Come on.
Are you throwing at me?
Am I up there? I'm right here.
Yeah. So he stood in there again, kind of looked at him. Next one, dots him right in the ribs. And he throws his bat down, and I was glaring at him like, oh, God, please don't do anything stupid. And as he's walking up the first base, he turns to the pitcher, and this is the best part. He flips the pitcher off. But he doesn't use his middle finger. He uses his ring finger to be like, I'm mad at you, but I'm not going to really go all the way in.
Give him the ring.
And so the umpire saw it. Well, he saw it, but then parents saw it, and they warn him, but they call him out. He says, "You're out," but that's a warning. And I'm like, God, really a warning? I would have run him right then. But as we're going to the dugout, he and I'm over at first base. We're having a conversation back and forth, and I'm like, dude, you cannot do that. And I probably should just throw you out.
Are you the first base coach in this?
I'm the coach.
But were you in the box, or are you coming out of the dugout?
I was in the box.
All right. Are you wearing the full baseball uniform?
Full uniform. No, I'm not wearing full uniform. I just did a big thing on this week. I was at a 10-year-old. I mean, Jesus, man, you don't need to be in full uniform. It's not a real baseball. Stop it. But he and I are arguing, going back in the dugout. He's like, I didn't do anything. I'm like, I saw you flip the guy off. You did it. No, I didn't. Yes, I did. No, I said, yes, you did. No, I didn't. We're going back and forth, and he's yelling at me, crying, and all that kind of stuff. Anyways, unbeknownst to me, because it comes up in the next, because we do bench him for 2 innings, but his turn's coming back up in the order. As we were arguing, I didn't know the umpire did this. He threw him out of the game because the umpire thought he was arguing at him. So when one of my other coaches go, because I'm telling my son, hey, you got to get up to hit. He goes, I think he got thrown out of the game. I'm like, what? No, he was out. He didn't get thrown out. So then I come back out. I said, hey, Blue. I love everything's blue. Blue. Did we call him out, or did we throw him out? Oh, I threw him out. And then I'm about 20 feet away. I'm like, okay, wait a minute here. Why'd you throw him out? If you didn't, did you wait to throw him out, or was this over him flipping him off, or something else? He goes, well, he was arguing with me. I said, no. He wasn't arguing with you. He was yelling at me. Yeah. I don't care. It's unsportsmanlike. I'm like, yeah, but you can't throw him out for arguing with me. And so he and I kind of going back and forth. And then I see one of the other parents in the team start to pull out a cell phone And I'm like,
you don't want to be that guy.
And I see it. I go, okay, no problem. And I just walk back. I go, I am not going to be on a video.
You don't want to be that guy.
No. So I went back, sat down on my bucket and put in my dill pickle seeds.
There's a lesson in there. There's a lesson in there. You know, life not
don't
fair.
Don't flip off the other
life
team. That's
not fair. Don't put yourself in that situation. Your kid knows that now. It's a good lesson to learn at 10. You don't want to learn that lesson at 20. You know, you learn it at 10. This is what sports are supposed to do.
That's right. All right. What's the latest up at johncanzano.com?
Well, I just the Monday mailbag was out. I took on a controversial topic in the Monday mailbag. The state of Oregon over the weekend had a trans athlete win the girls' 200-meter race, caused a big uproar in Eugene at the stadium, a lot of boos. I think the governing body of high school sports in the state of Oregon blew it. I think they let both kids down, the kid who got booed and then the second place runner who probably shouldn't have had to compete against a contestant that was born biologically male. It's a dicey topic, but I think I found a way, Puck. I think I found a real nuanced way to solve the problem. It's at johncanzano.com if anyone's interested.
I want to chew on that next week. I like it. Right. You know, people don't want to touch these things, but I think it's okay.
I think this is a smart show. We can talk about it. And I think the thing is, I care about kids. So I want, the kids to feel like they all got a fair shake. And the problem is nobody got a fair shake the way it went down.
Right. Good stuff. All right, go read that. JohnCanzano.com. Listen to him. Bald-Faced Truth, 750 The Game down in Portland. It's all brought to you by Zeke's Pizza. Please visit Zeke's Pizza today for the best selection of local Northwest craft beers. John Canzano every Tuesday here on pucksports.com. Oh, that was good stuff.